We promised you 2 farm system updates here, and we got the second one this week as we're playing catch up with you here on the call up. I'm Aram, he's Jack, and we got the Cincinnati Reds today to wrap up the NL Central. Just like that, we are done with the NL Central. Again, a reminder that you can follow along with the release schedule of each of these team top prospect lists. The episode might not necessarily come out that exact day, but I can assure you it'll pretty much come out either that day or the next one. Worst case, maybe a day or two after that, but very rarely even that long after we release the written version of it. If you go to justbaseball.com, prospects vertical, top prospects by team, you can see all those dates too, but I'll also link that in the episode description, along with the Reds top prospect list in the episode description. Some fun arms to talk about. I know a couple arms that we haven't discussed a ton that I know you're excited to talk about. Maybe checking in on some guys like a Rhett Lowder. We didn't talk too much about his big league debut, so I'm excited about that. Some bats we've talked a lot about, so I'll be honest, I'm not as eager to talk about some of the bats, but there are some others that I am excited to talk about. The frustrating part about this system is it did have a chance internally to take a leap last year, and unfortunately, so a lot of the names to watch, which we'll get to, a lot of the lower level IFA guys or even, maybe draft guys that were toolsy didn't quite have the years that you were hoping in 2024. I look at like a Ricardo Cabrera, who was fine, or a Hector Rodriguez, who was fine, but even like a Leonardo Balcazar, like there's several other players that you were hoping to see more from last year, and you just didn't quite see that.
I think we were really excited about the Cincinnati Reds going into 2024. And then, you see the promise, but you also see the injury decimation of the Reds at the big league level. And then at the lower levels, I think exactly what you're talking about. And that clump was all part of this group that got from the complex to Daytona at the end of 23. And we were like, okay, this is really encouraging. And they're all going to be Dayton Dragons this year, and they get to play in front of the perpetual sellout. And like Rodriguez was mid 700s OPS. I think Cabrera was same deal, either low to mid 700s OPS. But those were the two guys that impressed enough to stay interested. But then you also didn't really have anybody burst onto the scene like you may have been expecting. I don't know. It felt like a kind of underwhelming season for Reds prospects, I will say. The adjustment that Cam Collier made was probably the offensive highlight of the Reds minor league season, right?
I would say so, especially when Edwin Arroyo gets knocked out for the whole season. Stafura taking a step in the right direction is nice, but we'll get into him. Like, there's more concerns there. I know Carlos Jorge was a guy that a lot of people were really excited about. Again, another guy with a sub 700 OPS. So I would say Cam Collier and Sal Stewart, and those are the top guys that you were kind of looking at anyways, offensively. Like your two guys that put together probably the best offensive season are also the two guys that have the biggest positional questions. Yeah. So that's what puts this system in a little bit of a unique spot in terms of, where does it stack up? But there's still plenty of talent at the top. And there's still some players now on the back end that are going to be coming off of injury, or some pitchers that I think started to really show some good things last year that you can start to get excited about. So that's the other side of it that I think pitching wise, there are some things to be intrigued and I think pumped about if you're a Reds fan going into 2025.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
So we'll jump into it just as always with the screen share on the video on YouTube. And then of course you can follow along if you are not on the go right now with the link in the episode description. Names to watch. And as we just mentioned, Hector Rodriguez. The next guy, too, that's shown on the screen is another underwhelming season, but we'll get there in a second. Starting with Hector, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, he's 20 years old. He's still 20 years old, and he was good enough. He was probably number 16 on your list, right? I know we talked about it. He was 16 or 17, I'm sure. 20-year-old kid was pretty decent in Dayton, but it's not like he lit the world on fire. And, everybody's super excited to see what Hector Rodriguez does in Chattanooga. But he is one of those players that you were excited about in Dayton in 24 that is probably going to start the year in AA Chattanooga. He played good enough to get that promotion versus some of the other young guys that were in Dayton are probably going to be repeating high A when 2025 rolls around. But this is a guy that has had the feel for the barrel his entire minor league career. He's already played 331 minor league games. He's hitting 292 and he's slugging 470, man. I know those numbers are bumped up a little bit in the DSL and the complex, but dude, he swung it at every stop.
The ability's there. It's just, he was definitely 16, by the way. We'll get to 15, when we get into that top 15, and there's a similar profile there with just some more shored up aspects that really it was kind of like, hey, these guys are very similar, which made it even easier, I think, to go the other direction. Rodriguez has a good feel, as you mentioned. I mean, it was 89% in zone contact rate, but you mentioned how many games he has played as a professional at this point. And I know he's young, but with how many games he's played, to not see that chase rate dip below 40% all these over the last few years, to see the chase rate at around 50% against sliders consistently, you'll get eaten alive that way, at the upper levels. And that's the concern. And I think it even limited him in high A this past year, where he was able to produce league average numbers on the natural ability, but we saw what I think is probably one of the worst approaches in this system start to affect him. He's got good bat speed, but it's selling out for the pull side. I just think there's too many yellow flags here, and then not enough value beyond the bat, right? Like he's fine if that in a corner. So it's tough, but that said, he could be a late bloomer, and it wouldn't surprise me at all with the bat speed, the feel for the barrel, and just the talent he has to swing the bat.
Yeah. Wrote here, and there's no other way, I think, to sugarcoat this. Connor Phillips may have had the most frustrating and disappointing season in all of minor league baseball last year. And I don't think that's being too harsh. I think that's being correct, because this is a guy that was the strikeout leader in minor league baseball through the All-Star break in 2023 and pitched his way to the big leagues in 23. So we were looking at him as big league starter depth and a guy that can run it to the high 90s, maybe even flirt with 100 and have great ride on the fastball. And then all of a sudden he shows up and the ride went away. The fastball characteristics went away. When it was in the strike zone, it was getting killed, but it was just never in the strike zone. This guy had an ERA over 8, and he walked 60 in 78 and 2/3. 100 is still there. We saw him pump 99 to 100 in the Arizona Fall League. We saw him do that at the end of the AAA season when he came back from a hiatus. I'm not sure exactly what was going on, but you hope that he can figure out how to throw strikes and get just a little bit of fastball shape back, because this is a leverage arm if he has any feel for the strike zone.
Yeah, I mean, it was across the board concerning, right? When you lose 3 inches of vert on the fastball, despite your release height getting higher, you really lose feel for the strike zone. And the command was always going to be a little bit of an issue for him. But when you have a wipeout slider and a fastball that was dominant, you can tolerate that, right? But that kind of faded, and the fastball started to get pulverized. And just to put a number next to it, last year against the four-seamer, 380, 507, 634 slash line. That's what opponents did last year. It's an 1141 OPS with 13 homers. So on top, the slider still performed when it was around the zone, but like everything backed up, and then it was an overall strike rate of 58%. Good news is he's 23 years old. Maybe you move him to the bullpen and things start to get a little bit more, I think, under control there. But this was a guy that was a top 100 prospect because the fastball was plus, the slider was plus. He even was throwing a curveball that looked like it could be a solid pitch. It just was a lost year for him.
Yeah. I'm going to clump the next two guys together, actually, Zach Maxwell and Luis May, because I think it's an identical conversation. Luis May, over the course of his minor league career, 7.1 walks per night. Zach Maxwell, over the course of his minor league career, 6.2 walks per night. Luis May walked 43 guys in 55 innings between Dayton and Chattanooga this year. Zach Maxwell, I went back to the college numbers because they were crazy. He walked 98 in 97 and 2/3 at Georgia Tech. But guess what? They both throw fuel. These are humongous people. Maxwell's 6'6", 275. May is 6'5", 235. They sit like 99 to 100. They both max at like 102. Maxwell has this sharp power downer curve. I saw him throw like 88, 89 mile an hour power curveballs, and they were legit curves. They weren't like, little baby cut, whatever. It was a 89 mile an hour curveball. May, he's got a slider to work off that. If they both are around the zone in spring training, they should be in the big league bullpen on opening day, but way easier said than done.
Yeah, what's interesting is Maxwell is going to get a little bit more swing and miss because that fastball gets ride, right? And then
at 101.
At 101. May is not going to get as much swing and miss, but I think he can mitigate the lower strike rates because his 101 or his 100 is heavy and running and getting ground balls. So it's like, okay, it might be 2-0. Just whip 101 in the zone and dare a guy to try to barrel that heavy fastball there, right? So that's the thing is May kind of has a little bit more of the get out of jail free card, but at the same time, Maxwell has the ability to get swing and miss more. It's an interesting conversation here. And I think you just hope one of them can grab onto, a relief role for you at the big league level, but potentially both can. The stuff is not a question whatsoever. I was impressed when I saw May, but of course there was times where it was nowhere near the zone. I think he started to show some better things though in the AFL. With Maxwell, over his final 15 appearances, he walked 9. It's a 11% walk rate. You can get away with that with his stuff.
Of course.
So that's a positive indicator there. But I'd imagine both these guys probably start in AAA, and if they're hot, they'll get an opportunity to fill into that bullpen for the Reds. I think pretty early in the season. They've addressed the bullpen some, but there's still going to be, I think, some open spots in a revolving door, I think, in the middle relief area.
I really like the Rogers pickup, and I like that they got it paid down. I think they're paying Taylor Rogers six or seven. That's a nice price for Taylor Rogers. Just a proven arm, because you have upside relief arms here. You can throw Connor Phillips into this fold too. I mean, there's a world where he is a really solid reliever for you. So you have these high octane stuff guys. You hope one, best case scenario, all of them hit, but I think best case scenario is probably 2 of them hit. Yeah.
But you don't want to live and die on that. So you get the higher floor relief arm, but now you have these luxuries here. And even if one of them works out, that's just another just solid add to that pen.
Yep. Carlos Jorge is the next one. I don't have too much on him just because he was one of those lower level guys that we were excited about when he got to Dayton, and he didn't walk as much. He K'd more. It just felt like looking at the numbers and looking at, the game logs and just the video that I could find, it just kind of seemed like he was overmatched, maybe more so than the others.
Yeah, it was tough to see the hit tool kind of back up like that. And, this is not a guy that is going to be able to get away with striking out 30% of the time, right? And is a little bit aggressive. There's just there's not really anything that stands out on the positive side at this point with the offensive profile. I think you saw a lot of good numbers because he's able to pull the ball in the air pretty consistently. And he did that even, last year at points to tap into that power. But when the contact rates are well below average, when the EVs are below average and the chase rate's a little too high, it's hard to talk yourself into an everyday profile there, even though the defense has come along nicely in center field. So you got to be hoping for a bounce back, I think, next year, where he'll probably get another taste of high A, I would assume. I don't know how you could throw him into the Southern League after last year. Still just 21 for pretty much the entirety of the season.
Yeah. Next is Aristides Aquino, the outfielder. Rhys Hines, who hit 5 homers, drove in 11 in his first 6. Was this not just Aristides Aquino all over again, where it's like there are clearly red flags? He clearly swings and misses a lot, but Hines is, I think, a lot better than Aquino was, because Hines can hold his own in the outfield. He's a physical specimen, like one of the more intimidating batting practices that I've ever watched on field in Rhys Hines when he was in Louisville. Problem was OPS was under 700 in Louisville. It felt like advanced arms were making minced meat out of his approach. And then he just had this out-of-body experience at the big league level. He was really good in AA in 2023. So I'm hoping that he shores up the approach in AAA, and he could absolutely be one of those bench outfield mashers.
Yeah, I do still believe in him as like this short platoon, just bench masher, like you said, where, the whiff does drop significantly against left-handed pitching. While its strikeout rate's still high, you look at the contact rates, it's a lot better. I mean, the EVs are crazy. When you look at the 90th percentile of 110, and against lefties, it was 111. Still, ultimately, probably too much swing and miss to be an everyday player, right? But I think this is a player that people were probably needing to squint, and myself included, to see even a role at the big league level. But just beyond what we saw in that crazy Aquino run, some of the underlying data is so outrageous that I think you could talk yourself into him developing into a ridiculous power bench bat and potentially even a short platoon guy.
New guy that I'm kind of in on, Kyle Henley. Do you know anything about him?
Not much.
So $400,000 he got in the 14th round in the 23 draft. 20 years old, ran a 6.27 60-yard dash, 35 bags in 53 games at the complex. He's 6'2". So like he's 6'2", 180. He can absolutely fly. He only hit 2 homers. I assume the EVs are not good whatsoever, but he's 6'2" and skinny. Like assuming he puts on a little bit of muscle and can add something here, he could be tooled out, dude.
It's funny. The EVs are actually not bad.
Okay,
it's more about the contact rates that are surprisingly pretty low. But I mean, 90th percentile, 104. It just happens to be that 65% ground ball rate.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm interested. I'm down to watch an athletic center fielder, see what happens next year. But this might have been a personal push here on Kyle Henley.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just like, dude, 6'2", 760, I'm never going to ignore.
That is insane. That is absolutely insane. And you assume he can go get it in center field. If he's hitting the ball that hard already, like, hey, maybe he can put it together.
Yeah, 100%. All right, getting back to this slightly negative note, Blake Dunn, a guy who was really good in high A and double A in 23, pretty underwhelming in 24. And it was a 947 OPS, 23 bombs, 54 bags. He was like one of the best players in minor league baseball in 23. 24 comes around. He's striking out a lot. Power speed combo is there. It's just when the K rate elevates the way it did, you can't let the power sap the way it did. And it was only, I think, 7 homers in 99 games. In AAA this past year when he hit 23 the year before. He's got to hit for power. He's physically there. He can do it. It's just a matter of getting into it in game.
Yeah, I wonder what happened this past year, because I mean, I know that people were a little bit skeptical of Dunn, just given that he was older for the levels. But when you looked at the underlying data and just watched this guy play, you could very easily see a fourth outfielder, and I still can. Especially because this is a guy that destroys left-handed pitching, right? In 2023, he had a 1216 OPS against left-handed pitching. But I do wonder, like, how much that 101 mile per hour fastball cutter from Class A to the head, I think they gave him like a face laceration and stuff. Like maybe that affected him some because at the end of the day, like your numbers are your numbers. But I do wonder if that had anything to do with anything. But this is a guy that I still think the floor is so high, and there's a reason why he's on the 40, right? Like he's going to be a guy that I think can very comfortably grab that fourth outfield spot for you, and maybe in a pinch he can play regularly, and you're not upset about it. Like the chase rate was low, the EVs were good in 2023. The EVs dipped a decent bit in 2024, so. We'll see if he can bounce back, but I still am a believer in his athleticism and just.
2 more guys. Ricardo Cabrera is another one. And I know you mentioned Cabrera. Like the numbers were good. 111 WRC plus. He was 19 years old in low A. What pushed him outside the top 15 for you?
Yeah. So it's funny. Like this is one of those guys where sometimes I tell you, like I generally will look at the data and the underlying and just the contact rates and all that stuff before I just look at the surface level numbers. Yep. And I was pretty shocked after looking at everything else, then looking at the surface level stats that he produced an above average season, I think, in the eyes of WRC plus at the level. Cause it was a lot of not great, I think, across the board, right? Like you had an in zone contact rate of 75%. You had a chase rate near 35% and a 90th percentile exit velocity of 100 miles per hour, a hard hit rate of 25% as well. I know there's more than just those data points, right? But like, though, there's not going to be a lot of hitters that are in those ranges across the board that have success at high A, double A, et cetera. And on top of that, there's not a ton of defensive utility there. He's fine. But I was surprised to just see how low the EVs were. Tapped into a little bit more power because he can pull the ball in the air, so that helps. But we talk about it. The guys that can pull the ball in the air, like I generally like to see better contact rates from those guys because it becomes harder and harder to consistently manipulate the barrel the way that you want to do that against better competition. So I thought from pretty much every other like outlook, like every other perspective other than the surface level stats, it was I think it was kind of a step backwards for Ricardo Cabrera compared to some of the things that we saw in 2023, where I think the EVs were better. I thought the swing looked more consistent, and the contact rates were definitely better.
Got you. And then you got Cooper Bowman, the utility guy, who was taken from the A's in the Rule 5 draft. Bowman, we talked about him a little bit on the A's top prospect list, but chances are you were not going to be listening to that if you are a Cincinnati Reds fan. He was really good in Midland at the AA level in the Texas League. He was really not good in Vegas at the AAA level. But this is a guy that played second base, primary, and double, and then he gets to the AAA level and is playing primarily center field. He can handle both. And I thought this was a good Rule 5 pickup, man.
I do, especially for them, because they needed, I think, just a right-handed bat that can move all over and give you even more speed, lean into that side of things as well. This is definitely a guy. And then we talk about outfield, right? That a right-handed bat that you can plug into the outfield. Now it sounds like they're going to go the Austin Hayes route, which also helps a ton to just hit those lefties. And you hope that kidney infection was a big reason why the production took such a big hit last year. But with Bowman, just having this insurance policy at all these different spots, and a guy that produced a 928 OPS against left-handed pitching, the swing decisions are good. The overall, I think, impact is actually sneaky decent for him. Like, I think he'll hit the ball hard enough and it'll play up a little bit, obviously in Cincinnati, can pull the ball in the air pretty consistently. Yeah. I think he's a good fit. And even if it's a slower burn and he's not playing a ton, there's still enough ways where he's providing value. And I think long-term he turns into a nice utility piece, even if he doesn't totally make the transition to the big league level as smoothly as you hope this coming season.
Yep.
We're going to jump into the top 15 here, which starts with Ethan O'Donnell. But before that, our first break. So Ethan O'Donnell was the reason why Hector Rodriguez kind of got edged out here, because I look at them kind of similar, right? Left-handed hitting, outfielder. I think you look at Rodriguez, especially too, not a ton of defensive value there, where O'Donnell I think can project a little bit better in the corners and even play center field in a pinch with his plus speed. But what O'Donnell did in the second half of the season, I think is really what stood out to me, because he was a guy that was dealing with a shoulder issue through the first half and a lot of the season, kind of played through it, was managing it, but then got healthy, got comfortable, and we saw him go nuts in high A Dayton. Final 50 games of the year, 319, 385, 508 slash line. He hit 7 home runs and 18 extra base hits in that span. What I like is the big reason why he was not a day one or even a top 5 round pick, 6th round guy in 2023 was the lack of power. And he's now hitting the ball harder with wood than he ever had with metal in college before. So that's always a great sign. The swing decisions got better. He hits lefties well as a lefty. There's a lot to like here, I think, for a guy that could be a quality 4th outfielder, absolutely flies and can be a factor on the base paths. But we started to see him tap into that power more and more. And there's one swing to center field is a 110 mile per hour home run that he hit in August. And I was like, okay, he's found something here that I think could translate into, 2025. There is some swing and miss. So that is a concern, against now what will be AA pitching and in the Southern League. But I think he's heading into 2025 with a lot of momentum.
Cool. I love it. I was pretty excited about O'Donnell when I started doing the names to consider dive. And we exchanged a couple of late night texts where it was like O'Donnell or Hector Rodriguez. And I do like that you opted for this instead, just because it feels like the defensive value with O'Donnell is probably that much higher. And again, this is a war bet that you are effectively making between 16 and 15. And there are you run 1,000 simulations. There's probably 700 outcomes where O'Donnell is outwarring Hector Rodriguez.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. And then there's somewhere Hector Rodriguez turns into some offensive menace. But those only a few of them, I'd imagine. But there's probably a little bit more offensive upside with Rodriguez. But now when you're seeing O'Donnell pop 110s to dead center and you're seeing him already convert his speed into more value on the base paths, I think it's easier to talk yourself into O'Donnell, being that 4th outfielder and kind of accumulating that WAR, a little bit more easily.
Yeah.
Number 14, I know a guy that you like a lot and are excited to see more of this coming season. He had a great year. Adam Serwinowski, left-handed pitcher who really, I would say this was kind of his coming out party, right? Because they drafted him in the 15th round out of high school in 2022. And it was a slow, like transition, easing him into professional baseball, a couple years at the complex. And then this was a test for him in low A, and he finally got to throw a lot of innings too. After only throwing 27 innings, I believe it was in 2023, he threw 87 or whatever it was in 2024 and held his velocity for the entirety of the season. He was sitting 94, touching 95, 96, gets good vert. It's funky. The slider is pretty gross and plays up off of that. The challenge is it's two pitches at this point. But what we saw was a guy that was dominant with those two pitches. And I think even had an immaculate inning this past year.
It's so like funky. And I'm trying to figure out the right way to describe the delivery. I will say I queued up video of a punch out 95, pretty much middle of Agnello Encarnacion. And I'm just looking at the metrics here and I see it's 18 inches of vert. It's spinning at 2570. And the fact that he's doing this with a little hitch in the back leg and the arms flying absolutely everywhere after being tucked at the beginning, everything is tucked and condensed and then everything straightens out. And then all of a sudden the fastball's on you. And if it's on you at 95, 96, that's a totally different beast. And that's what makes it a 60, maybe 65 fastball if it is hitting 95. Like, I don't know. It's so funky. And it seems like the kind of guy, based on the look, based on how good the two pitches are, that could survive as a starting pitcher with a two pitch mix. It's just a matter of command.
And at least just finding, he doesn't need a great third pitch, right? It could just be a taste-breaking curveball or a changeup that he sprinkles in because the fastball and slider can be so good. Will definitely be dependent on the command, but the floor seems relatively high because that's a guy that you can plug into relief, either in multi-inning or potentially leverage, as he continues to develop. What's really interesting to me and what makes me feel like there's more meat on the bone here is he averaged nearly 2,600 RPM on his four-seamer, and he got nearly 18 inches of vert with this short arm, weird kind of spin around release that he has. But there might be even more in there with a little bit more spin efficiency, the way he's throwing. He also gets slightly above average extension, which is wild considering the short arm delivery. Yeah. So there's just some unique aspects that I think is just going to result in a ton of uncomfortable at bats for hitters. And what I love is even though he's a two pitch guy, righties didn't fare that well. They had a low 600s OPS. Lefties had a low 600s OPS. The big difference was lefties struck out nearly 40% of the time, while righties were closer to the high 20s, which is still great. But that also shows you that at the very least, this is a guy that can just go out and get lefties just to strike out, no problem. So I'm excited to see what he can do, in 2025, because he'll be probably challenged at high A. And I think it was also really encouraging to see him, push close to 100 innings and hold that velocity all year long.
So quickly.
Number 13 is a guy that I don't think either of us are going to have a ton on, but just the archetype and what he's already been able to do in the limited video I was able to see was enough for me to say, hey, this guy's enough upside to be in the top 13. Sheng-En Lin, $1.3 million IFA guy in 2023. He's, I guess, the like another Nolan McLean type where the Reds want to prioritize him as a pitcher apparently now, which is interesting because we only have game samples of him hitting. But on the mound, there was reports that he ran up to 99 as an amateur. I think it's more mid 90s, 93 to 95, but he's 5'11" and gets to run and ride from that release point. And then it's a splitter that looks like it could be above average and a slider that looks like it could develop into an average third pitch as well. He's definitely a great athlete on the mound. So there's a lot to dream on. It was really hard to put together scouting grades because I could barely see much of the pitches that he's thrown, and I didn't have access to a ton of data. But from what I was able to see, I do see a good athlete. I do see a good feel for three pitches, a quality fastball, and you factor in he's a plus runner. He turned in good results as a hitter, but I don't love the swing, to be honest. I can understand why the Reds kind of want to prioritize him as a pitcher who's going to also hit. But the fact that he put together good results at the complex in his pro debut, I think also says a lot too. So this is just a really unique player and a fun athlete that I think Reds fans should be excited about.
Did you grade the hit tool or no?
No, but
you opted out.
I didn't even want to put offensive grades. I was like, I'm already like stretched thin trying to put pitch grades here. I'm going to put offensive grades here. The hit tool is probably a 30 at this point. Like this swing is very like uppercut, top hand dominant. It's weird. It's like top hand dominant, but uppercut. So he's in and out of the zone pretty quickly. It's a weird swing. It's very punchy, but he made it work enough at the complex. I don't think it'll work against more challenging competition, but as he develops, like there's clearly the ability to find the barrel, and he's twitchy, and maybe he's this left-handed hitting pitcher that we see kind of do a little bit of both. I don't know, but they have options, and he's talented. So I think that's a guy that has to be in the top 15 for a system like this.
He hit 308 with an 836 OPS. Now, granted, it's Arizona, but I also think it's funny. He had 1 homer, but he had 6 triples. He had more triples than doubles.
He flies. I'm excited to see him on the mound, to be honest, because the limited looks I was able to get, it was really impressive. And then you talk about what he's doing in the box. It's pretty special that he's even able to do that. But contact rate wise, 53% contact rate. That's what's amazing about Arizona, man. You can run a 53% contact rate
and hit 310. Yeah.
Wild stuff, but super patient. So like, I don't know. We'll see what the role is, but I'm excited to see him on the mound this coming season.
Yeah.
Another guy I'm very excited to see on the mound this coming season who should be healthy is Ty Floyd. And Ty Floyd is comfortably a top 10 prospect in the system when healthy, but that's the big caveat. We've yet to see him make his pro debut because last season was wiped out. I think it was an elbow and then a shoulder, but I honestly think those two generally correlate. If you have some elbow soreness, usually, and then you go down with the shoulder, usually those things work in tandem. It's not like, oh, he's now going to have the elbow issue later on too. That happens too sometimes, but I don't usually get worried about it being like two separate things. And when you're rehabbing the shoulder, you get everything where you need it to be anyways. So I do think he's going to be in a good spot coming this season, and he's supposed to be ready to go. This is a borderline outlier fastball, which we've talked about, right? Like this is what made him a disgusting pitcher for LSU and the Robin to Paul Skeens Batman, who struck out 17, in the College World Series. He's the guy that can flip the glove and say, here comes a fastball. You won't be able to get on top of it because it's a 5.5 release height that can, and he can get 18, 19 inches of vert, sometimes 20 from that release height. That's just outlier stuff, especially when it's a couple ticks harder, which is what he had shown in that final year at LSU. Usually when guys jump a couple ticks like that, it can be some concern structurally, and that's what happened. The question is, what do the secondaries look like? The slider flashed, but he's definitely a guy that just spins it. I can backspin it, but has still tried to find the way to either pronate or supinate. Seems like it's a little bit easier for him to supinate. The slider had flashed, changeup's further behind, but he's had time to work on all of that and his feel to pitch as he's worked back. So it's kind of a wait and see game for Floyd, but he could definitely be a guy that flies up the rankings because that fastball has a chance to be elite. Yeah.
I mean, Skeens called it a unicorn, right? I think he said it's a unicorn fastball, and when you get that compliment from Paul
Skeens, the game, unicorn,
like he knows his heaters, and he knows exactly what he's talking about when it comes to pitch shape and all of that. And Skeens is aware of the pitch shape stuff, and the fact that he looked at Floyd and said, "You have something I want." It should like be that ego pump that Cincinnati Reds fans need and can absolutely accept. He was so much fun to watch in Omaha, and there are very few guys where you see a fastball take off like a rocket because, Pivetta, a guy that's at 20 inches of vert, you understand why, because he's coming from such a high spot. It's like, I wouldn't even say that it's Joe Ryan, Brian Wood, because those are, lower release heights and they take off a little bit less. This is just like, is it rising? Like it's kind of the one fastball that exists right now that you actually ask the question, is it rising?
Absolutely. And I that's why his floor seems higher to me. Like he can just dominate with that. It would be a 70 fastball if he wasn't coming off a shoulder, and shoulder surgery. I just can't put a 70 on a fastball until I see a guy throw after the shoulder surgery. So we'll wait and see. But this is a guy that, like we talked about the Cade Horton conversation, where it's just, if the stuff looks diminished, could be a,
slide.
If the stuff looks like it was what it was before,
he could be top 5 in this system.
Yeah. Horton gets the benefit of the doubt because he did it, professionally. Number 11, another recent draft pick, college arm for the Reds, Luke Holman, right-hander who went 71st overall in 2024. Another vert fastball guy, not to the degree of Ty Floyd, but is a guy that definitely generates vert. And what's interesting is he definitely has a more advanced slider. So it's kind of a give and take here, right? Fastball is not quite as elite, but he does get vert. Slider is a pitch that looks like it could be plus, but still with Holman, it's a process to find that curveball and that changeup to see what the distinctive third pitch is. That's the big thing as well. So I would say it's a little bit easier to talk yourself into a transition into pro ball when, you have the fastball and the slider going for you. But at the same time, you can look at a Ty Floyd and say, again, flip the glove up and dominate with the fastball. But another LSU arm, I wonder how much of that was like overlap in potentially just continuing to want to send guys over there. But the thing is, in 2023, Holman was at Alabama. So I think there is just some desire to tap into the SEC a little bit here, but also we've seen them to tap into the ACC. So I just think the Reds like their college arms here, especially in the first couple rounds. And it makes sense with Holman. His father, reached AAA with the Phillies. So you hope at 6'4", 200 pounds, he can grow into a little bit more velocity because the fastball is more averages 92 miles per hour. But with the vert that he gets, if he can gain another tick or two, that fastball could start ticking closer to plus. Sliders there. It's a downer curveball that, with a little bit more tightening up can be a quality pitch. And then the changeup is lagging far behind. But I think there's a lot to like here with Holman.
I don't know much about Holman at all right now. I'm telling you, when I see CPX, I'm like, we might be screwed, especially if they're in Arizona out here. But I do like the frame. I remember the process of Holman in the draft this past year. I was like, okay, yeah, this is a prep arm that makes a lot of sense for places. And, I'm trying to think about the comp. Like, I feel like Milwaukee takes a lot of those guys where it just feels like they are your prototypical high school arm that looks the part. And you hope that everything kind of ticks up as you continue to get more and more involved in a big league strength program and all that. But the fact that he's got the feel for 4 pitches right now, and he's got the feel for the strike zone with all 4 right now is really encouraging.
That's the thing, is like just execution a little bit more with the curveball and even the slider. But the fastball, I was watching some of the starts down the stretch. It's just going to be one of those pitches that gets chased above the top and gets swing and miss in the top third of the zone. So if he can find another tick, average 92 exactly, in his draft year, if that's 93, 94, that's a pitch that's absolutely going to dominate. And you imagine the slider being a little bit harder as well will allow for a lot more whiff also. But this is an arm that I think you're betting on the physical projection and then the fact that you have the bloodlines here too to hope for that extra tick. But I do like the quality of shape of that curveball. And if it's just a little bit harder, it's average like 76. If it can be a little bit sharper, I do think that could be a quality third pitch and not make the changeup development as important. Opponents at 172 against him last year. So, I mean, this is a guy that it was not a problem for him to keep people from really barreling at all. Only 6 home runs allowed, and he struck out 34% of batters. So it's hard to argue against the results.
Yeah.
Number 10, Sam Stafura. And Stafura turned in a nice season. Another second-round pick, 43rd overall. I believe they overslotted him in 2023. Northeast guy, did have some first-round buzz because of I think the way that he finished the spring and just some of the excitement around the tools. The swing is far off at this point, but he got closer to where he needs to be. And I think we saw that. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was a small sample, but at the complex struck out like 40-something% of the time, if I remember correctly, and then gets to low A and holds his own. The thing that stands out to me with him, though, is plus runner, good defender at shortstop, gets the ball out quick, moves his feet well. I think it was 30+ bags as well. Good plate discipline, but the swing is still far off for me. Like, I think as he faces some more challenging competition, it's going to be hard to make that all work. Very easily kind of gets pushed off into the front foot. He starts with the barrel, tipped over his helmet, pulls his hands back, but it's a long path there to get there as well. And he ends up, because of the angle, I think kind of fighting out open with that front shoulder, which results in this kind of uppercut swing. And almost seems like a tennis swing at points where it's like brushing the back of the ball. But at times they'll hit it straight up in the air, or it'll result in that kind of like brush the back, hit it into the ground. So it's just not in the zone, and there's not enough barrel depth, which results in challenges with breaking balls and secondaries. Yeah. But the fact that he took a step forward last year offensively, held his own in low A, has all the other tools, I think there's a lot to like here still with Stafura.
Just want to know when he ditched Sammy. Like, did he feel like he was old enough to go to Sam from
right
Sammy?
When he turned 20, maybe. He just turned 20.
I guess it's like, you know what? New digit leading the age, new me, huh? Now, where are your like mechanical swing concerns with him? Like if the intricacies of what you feel like could go wrong could be exposed as he continues to climb levels.
Yeah, like what I was kind of getting into there, where like the barrel being pointed pretty much towards like left center, and he's kind of hiked up towards his back leg, which is fine. But when he gets into his back leg, he does like a pretty medium sized gather, pulls his hands back. I feel like he gets so tipped and so deep into his backside that the first move for him is to, and he really coils inward too. I was looking at some open side video. The first move is to leave with that front shoulder. Yeah. And when you leave with that front shoulder, the barrel kind of drags behind you. And it just feels like he's fighting himself a little bit. But that said, like as he's fighting himself, he's still been able to just put the ball in play enough and get the ball in the air enough to turn in a good offensive season. But it does feel like getting there makes it hard for him to stay there because the bat has to travel so far. And I don't know if it's just the most comfortable way to get into your backside and stay there. He's still kind of learning, I think, how his body moves and what the best ways are to set up and control your lower half there. But I think the way that he's kind of maneuvering there, it just results in a lot of inconsistency, oftentimes getting on that front foot and oftentimes just kind of fighting himself with the barrel. And I think that's where it ends up getting in and out of the zone too quickly. Yeah. And that's why we saw him, struggle against secondaries, especially like depthier pitches, good changeups, bigger curveballs. Against those two pitches, he hit below 200 with an OPS below 600. But the swing decisions help. Like he ran a 20% chase rate and at least recognizes the spin well. But I just don't think his path is conducive to being able to, have a wider margin for error where, you're entering the zone earlier and leaving it later so that even when you're fooled, you're able to still kind of find the barrel. It kind of feels like he's brushing in and out of the zone quickly. So unless everything's timed up really well, it's going to be hard to really barrel it up.
Got you.
That said, the last thing I'll say on him, he gets it out quick, man. And I like the way he moves. So that's going to help his floor side of things. But with the mechanics where they're at right now, I do think high A is going to be a challenge for him. So we'll see where he's at, but he's added strength and it didn't come at the expense of any of his speed or twitchiness.
Gotcha.
Number 9, Julian Aguiar, who you've seen plenty of. Mm-hmm. He made it up to the show. It's just a high floor arm. The big leagues, you look at the ERA, what was it, like 6.75? Yeah. He showed some good things though. And I just feel confident at the very least that he's going to be a depth arm swingman, but you have a fastball that averaged 94.6 and you have a slider that looks like it's a plus pitch and he commands the heck out of both. Waiting on the third pitch to come along, but the changeup, I think when he was around the zone with it was a fine third offering. It's just the caveat is when he's around the zone with it. The fastball is a tough one for me because the Reds have a theme kind of some guys that are low release, but sinker guys. And generally sinkers play better from a higher release. And these low release sinker guys, we'll talk about Chase Petty too. Like it results in the fastball kind of blending into the dead zone. Aguiar is not as close to the dead zone with his fastball as Chase Petty is with his four seamer. Aguiar's is more of a two seamer, but it lacks some of that dive and heaviness to it. So it runs, but it doesn't really die or drop as much. And I think that results in him not really getting a ton of swing and miss at the top because it's more of a runner, but also not getting enough ground balls because it doesn't really have the heaviness to it. So if he could kill more vert, I would feel a lot more confident in his ability to be a number 5 starter. Sure. But still, with the late run that it features, the fastball is a lot more effective against righties. The difference is lefties, we're hitting it a lot better because it's just kind of running away from them and over to the middle of the plate, whereas righties, it was kind of running in on their hands, and you saw the whiff rate significantly higher.
I will say, watching Aguiar throw, it was very like, it looks stock, but he's just got this great feel for pretty much everything. And even the curveball, you got a 40 grade on the curveball. He can flip it in.
I'll flip it in.
It's a 40 because he flips it in. It's not because he's, ripping it down and it's a great pitch, but like, it's just kind of a taste breaker. And the changeup is I guess his touch and feel pitch, but watching him operate with that sinker and the slider, it was so much fun to just watch a guy that like is throwing like every stock righty you ever saw in high school. He's just better at it.
Yeah. And it helps when you can get it up to 90, 96, and he'll run it up there and he can locate, right? He's just putting it where he wants, which hedges that. A little bit more heaviness to the fastball and a little bit better feel for the change. And I absolutely could see a 5-starter, but with the fastball slider command and the quality of the slider, he can absolutely, and just the sheer velocity, absolutely be a solid depth arm and swing man for them.
I think so. I think they have a couple of decent ones, and I prefer Aguiar to Carson Spires, but Spires is another one of those guys that if you need a 6th starter, if you need a 7th starter,
and everyone does,
that you should turn to. Every single team does.
Number 8, Edwin Arroyo had his season wiped out, but we did get to see him in the Arizona Fall League, so it was nice to see him get back. Shortstop for sure. He may move around, but there's a guy that can absolutely play a quality shortstop. The power is fringy, but he's able to tap closer to that average power, despite the exit velocities being below average because he elevates so consistently. But at the same time, the approach is not great. So there's a little bit more pressure on the hit tool, but the hit tool looks like it could inch closer to average. It does stink to lose a year of development, but this is a guy that, remember, at age 19 reached AA. So at the very end of the season. So he could afford to lose a year, I guess, so to speak. I mean, no one wants to, but he's still on schedule. That's the positive side. I think we're probably a little bit lower than others on him based on this ranking. And it's just because for me, it's hard to kind of picture what the offensive identity is going to be. He's going to need to tap into power potentially because the hit tool, I think, is average at best, and it's probably going to be closer to fringy. The chase rate has been 30% or higher pretty much his entire professional career. And while he is an outslug the EVs guy, it's still a 90th percentile of about 100 miles per hour in 2023 before he tore his shoulder, in 2024 and wiped out his entire season. So that's the concern for me. He hits the ball harder from the right side than the left side, but maybe if he can grow into another tick in the EV department, his ability to get the ball in the air will be enough to, tap into 20 home runs. And if he can do that, then maybe you can envision this everyday shortstop, but I think it's more likely he's this utility infielder that can, give you 15 home runs, steal 20 plus bags and, end up playing more than you think.
And I think it's still a good piece to get back in that Castillo deal. And obviously Noelvi Marte was the headliner at the time. We'll see what happens with Noelvi Marte in 2025, but Arroyo as a secondary piece is fun because, at worst you've got, backup middle infielder. I don't want to go as far to say as at worst you have Taylor Walls, because Walls, it's weird because sometimes he graded out terribly, but everybody he's a gift from God defensively. And sometimes he graded out like a gift from God defensively. And people are like, oh, he's all right. So I have no idea what you get, but you've got a guy who can absolutely handle shortstop. I'm totally fine with him being a bench infielder on my big league team, but we'll see. Do you feel, okay, what's more likely? He shores up an approach after a year removed
about that, or
he adds just a little bit of pop?
I think the latter. And it's funny. I was thinking about that. I'm like, what's the archetype here? Is the hit going to get closer to average and the approach gets better and he's going to be able to make that work? I don't think so based on the operation. He starts open, very crouched. It's a big leg kick and it works for him. But I think it's also one of those things that his timing is not always going to be impeccable and he's going to swing and miss at points. And secondaries have given him trouble throughout, his professional career. He hammers fastballs. So I could see him adding a little bit more strength, especially after the shoulder issue. Usually guys will come back after injuries like that, just more physical in general, especially when he was age 20 and now he'll be 21 for the entirety of the season. He's still a young guy. Yeah. I do think ultimately, it's more likely he gets another tick power wise. And with the fact that he's already, lifting the ball consistently, and we've seen it from the right side, the right side, the EVs are pretty solid. And he ran a 90th percentile of 102 from the right side. From the left side, though, it was 100 flat. So if he can get, 102 from both sides, then I think you could start to see closer to that 20 home run potential.
Got you.
Number 7. Alfredo Duno. This is probably a player that we are definitely lower on than the rest of the industry, which is crazy because, I think it's still pretty high here for a guy that hasn't played a ton. Right. Duno, very exciting potential. And that's why he got $3.1 million in 2023. But at the same time, he has not been able to play much because as a catcher, first year at the DSL, elbow soreness, that resulted in him DHing the entire year. And then in 2024 at the complex in ULA, he got off to a pretty good start offensively and then broke a rib, and that wiped out his season as well. It was just low A, excuse me, but that wiped out his season after 32 games. So we haven't been able to see him play a ton. The glove has come along, and I think you can dream on tools wise, an above average defender because he has a plus arm. He has the ingredients to be a good receiver, and I think the blocking and stuff can come along because he actually moves quite well for a guy of his size, 6'3", 250. But the other side of it is I have some concerns hit tool wise, and that seems to be a theme in this Reds system. I kind of feel like I'm a broken record here, but the contact rates aren't great. He's very lungy with his swing as well. It's a big leg kick, and the barrel drags, and that results in I think a lot of trouble with stuff elevated and fastballs. And he was able to be productive, and he hits the ball hard, but he is very much lunging onto that front foot pretty often. Contact point way out front, and generally those guys will struggle with sliders and stuff like that. And he swung and missed quite a bit against secondaries. So I think I have a little bit more concern about the hit tool compared to maybe others, but the approach being what it is, which is really good. Sub 20 chase rate helps his case for sure. There's no doubting the power, but it's a long swing with the lunginess to it.
Why that much of a field tool discrepancy? You've got 40 present, 55 future.
He is a good athlete. Like, he can move. And I was watching him receive and learned a lot from my buddy Mike Rothenberg about the technical aspect of receiving, and like what's more technical versus what you can teach, and what's natural. Naturally, he moves well back there, and I do think he receives the ball well. In terms of the technical aspects, he doesn't always put himself in the best spot, and sometimes looks like he's a little late in general. But when you watch him slide, same thing with blocking. You watch him slide and move. He moves well back there, but they squirt through because technically he's not completely sound. Then also you have the fact that he didn't get to catch at all in the DSL, and then he didn't catch more than 30 games in low A. Yeah. He's just had no chance to really develop. So present, it's not going to be big league average just yet. But I think when you look at the tools, plus arm, the athleticism, the way he moves, the receiving aspects, you can very easily see, I think, an above average defender as he gets more reps.
Gotcha.
But he's going to need to slug. And that's I think it's a 30 hit tool. I really do.
With all these guys too, like you need to be big, burly power bat, and we'll see what happens there. But I don't know. It would be nice if you blossom into that 55 tool defender, but
he will probably need you to be a primary catcher, and that's why he's just at that 45 plus future value for us. Because I think he's right on the fringe of projecting as an everyday catcher. But when you're running an in zone contact rate below 70%, and the challenges with secondaries and the swing mechanic things that kind of stand out, you're going to really need to pick it.
Right.
Number 6, Tyson Lewis, a guy that I actually had to, lean on our draft guys, right? I had to lean on Tyler Jennings a little bit for some info on Tyson Lewis. There was some good video though from the Bridge League, from their second round pick here in 2024, where he did make some positive changes, where he used to kind of be like hands low, a little Seager-ish, but never really got to where he needed to be. So it was really hard to turn the barrel from there. And now when I saw some video in the Bridge League, was able to get himself into a good slot to have that bat enter the zone early. And he's got power projection here. He's 6'1", 190, but he added some strength as the draft got closer. That gave him some helium. But I think you can also dream on a little bit more impact there. It is a sweet stroke from the left side that you can dream on. He's a plus runner, has a shot to stick at shortstop. There's a reason why the Reds gave him more than $3 million to sign him, in that second round. And I know when I was talking to Tyler Jennings about it, he felt pretty confident that Lewis can continue to get stronger and potentially reach closer to that average game power, average hit combination, and has a good chance to stick it short. If they move him off, it's because you have a better option there, but has a chance to be an average defender there at least.
Guess what? I've got literally nothing to add. I don't know anything, and I wish I could provide something here, but everything you lay out is awesome. And the fact that you can dream on 50s across the board, that bumps the FV, that bumps the future value, right? Like he goes from a tier 2 prospect in the system to a tier 1 prospect in this system if he hits the ground running in 2025, which is cool.
It reminds me a little bit of the JD Dix thing too, where it's like, okay, is he hit or is he power? We have to kind of wait and see.
We got to find out. There are so many guys that we got to wait and find out, as opposed to just pigeonholing them in something. And obviously, the most notable standard of that, the most notable example of that, is Tamar Johnson. Like we just have no idea who you are, and let's just take some time to figure out who you are. But I'm excited to see JD Dix in the Brewers system, and excited to see what Tyson Lewis is in the Red system.
Yeah, I'm very pumped because those are the players that can end up turning into these just really complete ball players. So, and I think he should be a guy that gets a similar track to Stafura, and we'll probably see him in low A to start the year.
Gotcha.
We're going to get to the top 5 here, which starts with Cam Collier. Before that, quick break. Number 5, Cam Collier had a really nice season overall and a strong finish. We've talked about his swing adjustments on the show a good bit, and it was actually cool, to see Cam interact with that thread too, and said, like, I think his agent even reached out and said, thank you for highlighting the changes. People forget that, he's a teenager. And he was 19 years old for the entirety of the season, and kind of talking about pigeonholing guys, right? Like this was a player that I think at first it was, the approach is so advanced. The field of hits advanced, how much power is there? And then it was, there's a lot of raw power, but there's swing and miss. What is it all? Yeah. And I think this past season, he really made himself a much more well-rounded hitter. It's going to be power over hit. Like, don't get it twisted there. But he definitely made himself a more well-rounded hitter. We saw him tap into the game power more, hit 20 home runs, but we also saw him start to make more consistent contact. The TLDR, and I think I have it linked in the write-up for the thread that I put together on Collier's swing adjustments. But the big things for him, just being able to quiet down the operation, I think was very helpful. He had really loud hand movement that I think made it hard to repeat his timing. He also started choking up with 2 strikes, which was interesting to see. You don't see that a ton anymore. It doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for him. And he was a lot more effective in battling with 2 strikes. But he made some adjustments to facilitate that lower half control and repeatability. Before it was kind of the Lorenzo conversation, right, where he would like get it. It looked like he was getting into the backside, but then push right out of it. Yeah. Now he was more focused on coiling into the backside, staying there, and rotating over that back leg. The path had never really been a problem for him, in terms of his feel for the barrel, but the body was taking him out of it before. Now, not kind of lunging forward at the ball as much. He's able to stay back. That allows you to pull the ball in the air. You imagine trying to pull the ball in the air when your body's leading your swing. Impossible. You're going to be tied up, right? So that helped him a ton. And I think also just the fact that he became a little bit more selective. And I think also shoring those things up helped him become more selective. And it also allowed him to tap into more power. So you saw those swing adjustments improve everything across the board. And as a result, the way that this guy finished the season, I don't think is a coincidence. His final 40 games, actually, I'll go even shorter. His final 35 games, he had a 298, 447, 579 slash line. That's 1,026 OPS. 7 home runs in that span, and he walked more than he struck out. I think those swing adjustments paid dividends.
I think so. Simplicity is everything with somebody with these natural gifts. And it seems like what you're talking about is a guy that has simplified moves. And that's like really the secret sauce there, right?
Oh, whoops. There's the thread.
What happened to you?
I was sending you I clicked the thread. I was going to send us over to the thread there.
There we go. But no, I mean, it just seems like simplification was exactly what he did. And simplification will make things easier for a guy that young. And I mean, we always talk about, right, like the best swings at the major league level are probably the most simple swings. That it's just like, okay, all you got to do is point A to point B, and then the ball leaves the ballpark. He has only played third base in his professional career. He played 86 games at third. He DH'd 33 times. Is he going to stay at third?
That's the big question, right? It helps that he has a plus arm, easy plus arm.
Yeah.
And I think at this moment, yes, but I think there's some concerns that, the body will get to a point as he matures that he just won't move as well. But for now, I think he can be a passable third baseman. And with the arm kind of hedging that too, where it's like, he's going to be good enough. Even if the range isn't great, if he's still kind of, most guys are maybe fielding it in stride. He's still kind of going the other direction still. He can throw off his back foot and make it work. So For now, I think yes, but I could also see a world where he's moving over to first base and there's more pressure on the bat. But I do think he can get by at third. And the last thing I wanted to mention too is the adjustment that he made to be able to stay in that backside and not really drift forward and drag the barrel resulted in him cutting that ground ball rate like pretty significantly. And the ground ball rate was a big concern. And he cut that by nearly 10% this past season. So you got to feel good about where the game power is continuing to head, and 20 home runs and your age 19 season in the minor leagues is not easy to do.
Where do you think, if you were to guesstimate his overall production in AA Southern League this year, that's going to be a humongous step for a guy like this.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. The ball doesn't fly great out there, but I think a huge development in this whole thing is the fact that he was pretty aggressive in 2023. And I think also just being able to shore up the swing decisions, he cut his chase rate by about 5% and his chase rate against spin dropped by 10%. So I think that's going to help a lot. And a guy that hits the ball as hard as he does should be able to hit through those tough environments. Yeah. I think it'll be hard to get to 20, but if he's hitting, I think he could hit 15 to 18 home runs. And if he's walking at a decent clip, I think we're going to see another solid offensive season, but it might be a little slow out of the gate for him, as it should be for a 20-year-old at that level who is continuing to adjust, but proving that he can adjust. Earn time marks for the makeup. And I think we saw that last year. Making those adjustments in season is not easy to do.
Gotcha.
Also so powerful that when he's choked up, hitting bombs with the choked up kind of make contact approach, which is a testament to the power as well.
Cool.
Number 4, Sal Stewart, a guy that can absolutely hit with the best of them in the system from a contact perspective, but we're waiting to see the raw power turn into game power. Another guy that you're waiting to find out where he plays defensively. He gets by at third right now. I think probably projects as a second baseman, but at the end of the day, it's going to be all about the bat, and you can get some value maybe of just that he can get by at both potentially. He has put together nothing but good numbers since going pro. And I loved him since the Reds took him 32nd overall in 2022. When healthy this year in 80 games, slash 280, 392, 455. The thing that stands out the most to me about him is, I think there's a lot more power to be unlocked as he gets a little bit more comfortable with pulling the ball in the air. And it looks like his load can be a little rushed at times. But in his age 20 season, he put up the numbers I just mentioned, but also the EVs are great. 46% hard hit rate, a 90th percentile of 105 miles per hour. It's just they're mostly spraying line drives all over, right? It's hard hit line drives all over the yard. He has no problem going the other way with authority. As he gets more comfortable elevating, this is absolutely a guy that can push to 20 home runs. But I think he's going to be a doubles machine. His approach is solid. He recognizes spin well, and he makes plenty of contact. And that's the biggest thing with him is he's going to find the barrel consistently. 81% contact rate this past year is more than enough, especially when you're hitting the ball as hard as he has.
We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 players in the history of Westminster Christian in Miami to play more than 400 games in the major leagues. Who are they?
Alex Rodriguez.
Christian. A-Rod is number 1. Yes.
Oh man. Westminster Christian.
Yep.
4, you said?
4. I don't think you're going to get 2, but there's one kid our age.
It's one kid our age that went to Westminster Christian?
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to make me angry because I definitely know it.
Yeah.
Just give them to me.
MJ Melendez?
Oh, MJ, of course. Damn
MJ Melendez went to Westminster Christian. Yep. So did Alex Rodriguez. So did Doug Mankiewicz. And so did JP Arancibia.
I didn't know Arancibia went there. That's funny.
2 other guys have appeared in a big league game. But Sal Stewart is hoping to become the 5th consistent bat from Westminster Christian. But you mentioned all he's done is hit 205 minor league games, 277 with an 825 OPS. It's legit.
It's crazy. And it's such a simple swing, just very compact, efficient. And the fact that I'm looking from 2023 to 2024, so combining the last 2 seasons, chase rate against secondaries below 20%, absolutely pulverizes fastballs. So if you pulverize fastballs and recognize spin, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. But he's also hit spin pretty well also. He's walked Exactly. So between 2023 and 2024, 134 walks, 133 strikeouts. It's ridiculous. So it's just all coming down to being able to tap into that power a little bit more. And I think it's really going to just be pulling the ball in the air, and that's going to be a timing thing. But the clear thing is, even when he's a little late or whatever it may be, he can catch balls deep and shoot them the other way with authority. And that's a harder thing to develop, I think, than, getting it down a little bit earlier and being able to catch it out front a little bit further and pull home runs. I think that'll come along as he matures and just gets more comfortable. But what he has consistently been able to do offensively is really impressive. And there might even be a little bit more in the tank. The question's defensively, and I think it's probably just an offensive-oriented second baseman who can plug in at third. Okay. But this is a guy that could probably push through the minor leagues pretty quickly. And I do think he's going to make that transition into Double-A quite easily with just his skill set and what he already has going for him.
Yeah, sounds a lot like a guy that Cincinnati just traded to Kansas City.
Well, yes.
Offensive-minded second baseman that can get by at third base.
Yeah, no, it does kind of check out. I would say Sal hits the ball harder.
Okay.
India, I think, was tapping into the game power a little bit more.
They both walk a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities there for sure. And he might have been part of the reason why they were okay with saying, hey, we don't need you now. We're going to have Lux in the meantime. And I think they're ready for Sal to grab a spot up there in the next 2 years.
Cool.
Number 3, Chase Petty. Chase Petty turned in a nice year, and it felt kind of under the radar, right? Traded from Minnesota. That was the Sonny Gray deal straight up. The big question. Oh,
was it? Was it straight up?
I think it was straight up.
I will confirm as you give me the 411.
So Petty, the slider's disgusting. It's a gyro slider. And here's the funny thing. Like, I've seen people quantify it as like a cutter or that is a slider. And then the other breaking ball is a curveball. It's 2 sliders. It's a gyro slider, and then it's a sweeper, in my opinion. But the gyro slider is borderline plus. It just falls off the table. And from his release point, it seems like it's impossible for hitters to get to. And then when they do, they end up just weakly hitting it. What was a big jolt for him this year, aside from the fact that he was able to throw 137 innings, is the sweeper that he found in the second half, because that was not a pitch that he had really had previously at all. And the changeup was his third pitch last year 2 years ago in 2023. But the changeup was a little inconsistent. Now it's an excellent fourth pitch, but the sweeper becoming what it was last year really helped solidify the entire arsenal, because even though he throws hard, and we've talked about the identity of Chase Petty too, right? This was a guy that was 100-mile-an-hour four-seamer as an amateur. And then in 2023, we saw him lean into the sinker side of things. And then this past year, we saw him throw both, where he threw a four-seamer and a sinker. The fastball shape situation I'll get to in a second, but the fastball didn't perform that great. Neither of them did. But that makes it even more important to have quality secondaries. Again, the slider at 89 to 91, that gyro slider was dominant. What else could you have beyond that? The sweeper really came along. And over the final 15 starts, he upped that usage a good tick, and opponents really struggled against it. Hit 178, and he was able to just fill it up against righties and make it a really uncomfortable AB for them. And so with that slider, sweeper, changeup combination, it's a really good trio of secondaries.
Yeah, he's a different arm, and we I think documented this pretty well. He's a different arm than the guy that Cincinnati might have traded for initially, but certainly the one that Minnesota drafted. By the way, it was Sonny and Moore for Chase Petty. It was Sonny Gray and Francis Peguero going from Cincinnati to Minnesota.
My fault.
For Chase Petty. But you look at him, and obviously he's put on some great weight, and he looks like a physical beast. But I mean, at 6'1", 190, the stuff is kind of unassuming. You would expect this stuff from 6'4", 215 or something, but he gets the most out of his frame, and it's really fun to watch this guy. And, at first I saw the frame and I thought, okay, it's going to be loud stuff, but how durable is it going to be? Now it's the exact opposite. Now it's like, oh, durability is a real thing. And you mentioned the inning total. The fact that he can just flick a sweeper or really rip a slider and can turn his wrist the other way, he can absolutely be on cruise control through 6 innings in a given start. I don't know when he'll be ready to do that at the major league level, but I'm really excited to monitor what he's doing in Louisville.
He can be a middle rotation arm if that fastball situation can kind of get sorted out here. Because I agree, like the pitchability is clearly there. The changeup, he drops his arm a little bit, so it seemed like hitters were able to pick that up a tad. And I think, again, the improvement of the sweeper, I think really introducing the sweeper takes some pressure off of that. But I still think the changeup can come along, and he gets 17 and a half inches of horizontal on that changeup. Like, that's crazy stuff. But when you look at the 4-seamer and 2-seamer, the 4-seamer gets 15 inches of vertical and 16 inches of horizontal. The 2-seamer gets 10 and a half inches of vertical and 16 inches of horizontal. Essentially, the 4-seamer's sitting in the dead zone, but from a 5-4 release that you can get away with it a little bit more. And then the 2-seamer is moving like a 2-seamer, but from a 5-2 release height, it looks more like a dead zone fastball as well. So that's the problem. It's a low release, so the 10 and a half vert is going to still kind of play up a little bit more, and it's going to hedge some of that horizontal movement. So I think it's either finding a way to have some more heaviness to that 2-seamer, similar to the Aguiar conversation.
Yeah.
I think from a low release point, it's hard because he's kind of horizontal too, though. If he could find a way to be more vertical, he would be dominant. Like if he can find a way to kill horizontal on that 4-seamer, it would put him in a really good spot. I don't know which path is easier for him, and it is helpful that he can throw both of these fastballs, but I think one of them, it would be great at both, but one of them needs to kind of shift a little bit, I think, for him to reach that number 3 potential. But I think he's a really good shot at being a quality 4 starter, and I think showing flashes of a 3 with the athleticism on the mound, and now the secondaries that we see.
They need someone durable like this. And I'm looking at the stable that they had. Ashcraft, I would have bet my life on Ashcraft being just a durable back end starter, and now he's moving to the bullpen. But like Connor Phillips and Brandon Williamson trending the way that they have, they need somebody like Petty to actually be that guy that can give them 130 innings.
No doubt. And who would have thought we'd be saying that in with Chase Petty? And that's why I think that's got to be the biggest thing. The sweeper is great, and the slider proven to be borderline plus pitch is great.
Yeah.
But the fact that this guy turned in almost 140 innings,
crazy,
is I think one of the more important things to his stock in general. If you look at like a chart, like XY axis here, like his slider is so close to the crosshairs that it's just got to be such a weird pitch for hitters to try to really get to. It's really that gyro slider that I think is going to translate immediately, and also is effective against both lefties and righties because of that shape that, again, takes some of the pressure off needing to have another secondary for lefties. So he's got that sweeper for the righties, the gyro slider for both lefties and righties, but then also the changeup to mix in there as well. I'm excited to see what direction he goes fastball wise.
Yeah.
Another guy with a pair of fastballs, but he seemed to find the direction, and we saw it at the big league level. Rhett Lowder had a great MLB debut, number 7 overall pick, of course, by the Reds. And, this is a dude that really wowed at Wake Forest, has just continued to pitch well at every stop. There was a little lull at one point, and I think people were like, oh, the stuff's not good enough. He rectified that pretty quickly. Is he going to be a guy that's flirting with, 30% strikeout rate? Probably not. He doesn't need to be. And I think we saw that again at the big league level. What I was most impressed by is, and I want to get Rhett on the show. I texted you about this because I want to ask him about his 4-seam situation.
Yeah.
He's got the sinker and he's got the 4-seamer. The sinker is great because it helps him get contact on the ground, which, that sinker yielded a ground ball rate of 63%.
Yeah.
But the 4-seamer was a pitch that previously didn't perform as well. You're thinking, okay, he's got to just lean more into the sinker. But he actually threw the 4-seamer more this past season and had more success with it. He's funky, and I think that helps his case. But from a shape perspective, the 4-seamer is not great. It's a standard release height, 5'9", and it's 15 inches of vert and 10 and a half inches of horizontal. Like, that should get hit pretty hard. But what I noticed when I was watching more and more of his starts is he varies that 4-seamer. Sometimes it's getting, and that was the average numbers they give you, but sometimes it's getting 13 and 13, like right in the dead zone. Sometimes it's getting 16 and 7. And it's always a slightly different release point too. So again, I don't know if that's fully intentional or it's just like a natural phenomenon that he's able to just create and make hitters uncomfortable. Yeah. But also the ability to locate it helps a ton. And I think it's a big reason why he got a lot of swing and miss on his four-seamer in the zone. You wouldn't expect a fastball at 94 miles per hour with 15 and 10 to get a swinging strike rate of 13% and an end zone whiff rate of 24%. Those are both above average figures, yet he was able to do that. And he got no question about filling up the zone. He had a 69% strike rate on the four-seamer and a 71% on the sinker.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's as complete a product as I think we have in a minor league pitcher right now. I think Job is probably the other one. But when you look at overall ability to feel literally everything coming off of your fingertips, I think it's Job and Rhett Lowder right now. Yep. And I mean, we're talking about Bubba, we're talking about Noah Schultz, Painter, obviously. Listen, Painter got cut. Like, he's going to have the feel, come back at some point, but he's coming off Tommy John surgery. So I'm putting Lowder ahead of Andrew Painter at this point. But Bubba, like, it's Lowder stuff. Noah Schultz, it's Lowder stuff. The slider's better than anything. Lowder, L-O-W.
Yeah, I was going to say L-O-U.
Yeah, L-O-U, L-O-W, all that. It's going to be hard to decipher all that. But what I'm saying is Rhett Lowder probably has, if there was a pitchability grade, and I know pitchability is such an abstract word, and it's like, what do you even mean by that, man? Isn't that just command? No, it's the feel for the arsenal at all times and the ability to deviate within a start. I think it's Lowder and Job at the top of pitching prospects as it stands right now. And that is how 94 can go top 10 in a draft. That's how 94 can be a rocket ship through the minor leagues. If you know where it's going every freaking time and you've got a slider and a changeup working off of that perfectly.
Yep. You nailed it. And I think the command also is plus, but the fact that he can just kind of vary these looks. And again, I don't know if it was intentional, but how with that fastball, do you know what lefties hit against his fastball? This is in the big leagues and in the minor league stint. 28 starts, 186, 286, 309 slash line against his four-seamer, and he throws that four-seamer 42% of the time to lefties. So he's clearly just creating this uncomfortable look for them and varying it and elevating, and then it's a little bit heavier and down. And he has this course of action, right, where with righties, they're going to get the sinker, and with lefties, they're going to get the four-seamer, but he'll still sprinkle in the other one enough to where you got to think about it. The craziest part is I don't think we saw the best of Rhett Lowder in general. Obviously, the big leagues, like those numbers were crazy. The changeup was always there for him through college, and it wasn't there for him last year, like it's normally been. Like strike rate for his slider, fastball, like four-seamer and sinker was 69.5%. The strike rate for his changeup was 53.5%. It's super uncharacteristic for him. So if that changeup gets back to where it was before, and that's more of a field pitch, maybe just going from the college ball to professional ball and then the big league ball, like there was just a lot going on there. And who knows if they were using the same balls in the Southern League. If that changeup gets to where it was at Wake Forest, I mean, this guy could be an absolute force for the Reds next season. And I know it was always floor over ceiling, but if that changeup comes along with the four-seamer aspect that we see and the slider being what it is, he could push closer to that number 2 starter. I do think he ultimately settles in as a solid middle rotation arm.
And I think long-term he's going to be a 3 because you have maybe co-front line arms that are very darn similar at the top and number 1. And then obviously the guy that got some Cy Young votes last year in Hunter Green.
Exactly. And that's a great situation to have though, especially with the volatility at points with the high octane stuff, guys like a Hunter Green and a Chase Burns, just to have that, like, get ground balls, get outs, quick 6 innings that Rhett Lowder would be able to give you behind him. But Chase Burns might be able to give you a little bit of everything. And that's why I'm really excited to see what it's going to look like in his pro debut. And I imagine he's a guy that they're not going to waste a ton of bullets, in whatever level he's going to be in the minor leagues, period. Burns, absolute gamer. I don't think there's any doubts about that. The only question that we have with him is the fastball shape, right? Because we talked about it. He got plenty of whiff, and we've talked about this on the show plenty, but for Reds fans that are, just tapping in, but he also gave up a lot of loud contact on that fastball in college. And it wasn't just at home, because everyone's talking about, Wake Forest is a bandbox. Home and road, it was almost identical. The four-seamer guy hit hard, but that was something that Hunter Green dealt with. And as you mentioned, the similarities there and the template there. What you can't teach is upper 90s. He does get 20 inches of vert. It just seems like or flash that, but it just seems like it's over the top and on an easy plane to pick up. So just what are some things that you can do there? Is it location or whatever it may be to help him keep the ball in the yard more there? But this slider is a 70 grade pitch.
Yeah.
And then he has a curveball off of that would blend a little bit, but looks like it can be an above average pitch. And he fills up the zone at a ridiculously solid clip for a guy that's as high octane as he is and high effort as he is. So you have, the fastball, you assume it gets to where, Hunter Green has been able to find it. The slider is already there and disgusting. And the curveball gives him a fine third pitch. If he can find the changeup, and look, Hunter Green played around with it with the splitter. Maybe Burns finds something there too. And that might be harsh with the 35-45. I just have to see it. Like, he didn't even throw it much. You almost fully ditched it by the end of the year. So I think it was just why bother in college? I'm trying to win a national championship. I'll figure that out in pro ball.
He's got to find a level of effort that isn't max if he's going to throw 200 innings in the major league season. And I don't think that you can do the changeup thing if you're throwing max effort.
What about a split though? Maybe a split could work from that.
You can, but Hunter Green, look at him throw. It's not max effort now. He used to be harder effort. He used to be higher effort in the minor leagues than he is in the big leagues right now. And you just get stronger and you maintain velocity and all that stuff. Fastball, slider, curveball are always going to work when you capitalize on tilt and you rip the living crap out of each pitch. Yeah. And that's what he did at Wake. And that gives you optimal stuff. And there's a reason he was throwing 101 and has a 70 slider and has a crazy biting curveball that got really bad swings on pitches that literally bounced on the plate. But I think he's got to find something that isn't max. And that's probably when the feel for moving your wrist the other way comes.
100%. And if he finds that, good luck. But I do think if he can just separate the curveball shape wise from the slider a little bit more, that could be enough to be that third offering. And with the fastball quality and the fact that the slider, it doesn't matter if you're a lefty or righty, you weren't having success against it in college, but I don't think you're going to have success against it as a pro. It's just ridiculous. Lefties, they in college at 141 against it with ridiculous whiff rates. Righties didn't have a shot. They hit 060 against it. But the point being, and by the way, cumulatively, opponents combined for below 100 against his breaking balls. That's crazy stuff. So fastball shape and location comes along a little bit further. Find that third pitch, whether it be, a split or whether it be, a more distinctive shape to that curveball, which I think the latter is more likely. We've even seen it through flashes. Yeah. This guy is going to be a dude. He's going to be the Robin to Hunter Green's Batman, but I think there's going to be days where he can match that strikeout output and all that good stuff. So the big question is just that fastball shape, I would say, above all. And it's funny because the shape is good. So I just say fastball performance above all to see if he can find a way to make it work a little bit more effectively.
As we got into the draft, I was Team Burns. You were Team Hagen-Smith. I think as I've gotten into pro ball, or as both have gotten into pro ball, I've started to understand the Smith shout a little bit more just because it feels like it's something that's going to work right away as opposed to Burns, where I think there's going to need to be some tweaks there. Who's got the higher ceiling? I think I still side with Burns. Over Smith.
Burns. I go Hagen because I think you can just throw him out there and you could go fastball slider and get guys out right now. Whereas Burns, if the fastball's performing like it was in college, if college hitters have 1,000 OPS against it, what are pro hitters going to do? There's some things that need to be tweaked. But in terms of the template and the body and the athleticism, Burns can be an absolute monster. And not that Smith can't. I just think it's easier to envision Burns unlocking ace potential with Hagen-Smith. I think it's hard to see him struggle, but it's also hard to see a true ace there with the way that he throws and the arsenal that he has. So, I think with the way that Burns is able to throw, I do think a split's going to work there, but he could also try a cut, and that's just a slight little turn, and that could give him something. I just think with the athleticism and he's high effort, but there is a feel to pitch there. There's a template where if they're able to work with him and I think do the right things, and I imagine they will, and that's why they invested in him and picked him where they did, which was a little bit of a surprise. I think they have a good plan, and that Hunter Green template should put Chase Burns in a spot that shouldn't be too far off from Green if it all works out.
For sure.
That'll do it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We're done with the NL Central. Again, I don't have it in front of me, so I got to double check what.
I thought we still have to do Cardinals.
Oh, we do still have to do Cardinals. I keep saying that, and I keep forgetting that.
What's up with you, man?
Cardinals.
Crazy.
Yeah. So we still have to do Cardinals. February 4th, we've got St. Louis Cardinals, and we'll be ready to go. So again, that's linked in the episode description if you're listening along. But looking forward to wrapping up the Central. And then from there, we will be moving on to,
I think, guard ball, right?
Yeah. Yep. Cleveland Guardians update, which is going to be fun because that is of course, always a good system. Then the Twins, and then we're done with all the Centrals. So keep an eye out for that. And we will keep churning these out. Have a great weekend. Look forward to talking prospects with you next week.